Hello, welcome back to the channel. I'm Damo, and on today's peddler video, you may remember, if you've been watching the last few weeks, last week we did a long-term owner review of the Peugeot 205. The week before that, the Mark III NC Mazda MX-5, aka Miata. Well, this week it's the turn of the Mercedes C350E hybrid plug-in hybrid vehicle. Let's start with the first category, what's gone wrong with it. The starter motor broke. Really, that has been it. Just the starter motor. It is quite odd how that problem, it's not odd if you understand sort of how the car works, but it's odd how that problem sort of manifests itself if you're not familiar with this hybrid model. It basically stops kicking in the it stops going to electric only mode because I think it's worried that there isn't enough, that the starter isn't working enough to then kick in the petrol engine. It's a bit weird. It comes up with an error code, and when it went, unfortunately, the timing of it was rather inconvenient, as these things always are. It didn't actually break down per se, it just flashed the error. And then I think it kind of only defaulted to running in petrol mode. The reason I don't know is because I wasn't here. I was out the country. And it was my wife who was driving the car. She was due to go on a long trip, which is a bit unfortunate. So in the end, she decided, or we recommended not using the car until we got the starter motor fixed. It was replaced with a Denso starter motor by a local Mercedes specialist who are mobile. They come out. They've been the ones that have serviced the car. But really, that's the only thing that's gone wrong per se. What are we on? We're nearly at 60,000 miles, and we bought it with about 37,000 miles, so 20,000 miles of motoring, pretty good. The gold wheels, they went wrong. Obviously a choice, somewhat divisive decision. If you haven't done already, have a look at the video where I talk about that, and you can see my reaction to when I picked them up. I've kind of put up with them, kind of got used to them, but they're a bit I really want to pay to have them refurbed again. How could it be improved? Well, this car doesn't come with CarPlay. It's a 2016 model. It's not the end of the world, because you can just mount your phone, plug your phone in, which is what I do, and I have a wireless charger for the phone that just magnetically clips on, which is fine. You've obviously got Bluetooth compatibility. You've got nav. So I kind of use both navs actually. I use the car's nav and the nav on my phone. Just like double protection if I'm going on a long journey. That's just me, a bit crazy. So CarPlay integration would be nice, I suppose, but this model doesn't have it. The display, the central display, is not touchscreen. It's all controlled with the dial in the center. It's fully spec, this car. It's a premium plus, and I think I've said this before, I wanted to replace it after 2 years. We're now coming up this September. In a few months' time, we'll have owned this car 3 years, which is quite a long time for me to have owned any car. I haven't owned a car like for that long for a while. I think probably the BMW M3, which is also on the channel. Part of the problem is I don't know what to replace it with, because nothing has gone wrong, because it is so comfortable, because of zero road tax, because of the electric journeys that you can do locally and just plug in and not really use any petrol and get really good MPG, because it's an estate, because it's got a nice light interior, it's got panoramic roof, it's got 360-degree camera, it's got lane departure warning, it's got the guided cruise control with the assisted steering. It's just, for a 2016 model, fully spec car. Once you've had all those toys, no matter what your personal opinion may be of them, it's quite hard to go back, and then finding a model, even now, which potentially would cost double. This car was probably depreciated about £8,000. I think we paid 22 something for it in 2022. Mid-autumn, sort of, I think it was September 2022. It's probably worth privately now 15 and a half, maybe 16 at a push. Probably shouldn't say that because I'll decide to sell it. Someone will see this and then bid me down. But it's not worth a lot, and you then get into this scenario of trying to find a car with an equivalent amount of spec that this has, when you're laying out a lot of money, and that is actually quite limited. I love light interiors. I don't want a car that I'm using regularly. This is the car we use the most. I'm not a fan of dark interiors. I like it to be brighter and fresher. It just feels like a cliched, nicer place to be. Yeah, so it's hard. Anyway, the only thing it doesn't have, so it's fully loaded, this is how you can improve it, is there's a blank plate there. I hate blank plates for buttons that don't exist or do anything. And there's obviously for cooled seats, and now never had cooled seats, but I imagine it's quite nice on a hot day. So cooled seats, could have that. Not seen one with it, to be honest. The button's there. I guess it exists on, because obviously this is a C-Class interior that's used across all the different C-Classes, the convertible. It's a W205 range, etc. So yeah, cooled seats would be good. A more electric range would be nice, but then you compensate that with extra weight. And my other improvement was make it lighter, which again, you can't make it lighter and then extend the range, the electric only range. But there you go. It's the high voltage battery on these obviously do degrade. This one seems to be holding up pretty well. A reported 11 to 12 mile electric only range on a full charge at home. Takes about 2.5 hours to charge. I've got other videos on charging tips and driving this car on the channel, so check them out. But yeah, a bit more electric only range would probably be quite nice. And in Sport Plus mode, because of the weight of the car, it livens everything up, it revs a lot harder, you can use the paddle shifts, it goes like stink, to be honest. But because of the weight, it drives a bit like a boat. So you do have to consider that. It's lively, but you know, you're coming up to a roundabout, it's not a four-wheel drive, but it kind of has that sort of tendency to wallow a bit because of the weight, even though it tightens the suspension up. So if it could be, it's not a dynamic driver's car. It's a great everyday car for pootling around on electric and for doing motorway journeys, which is what we're doing today. But yeah, so those are all conflicting improvements, but very small really. Just as a side note, we have a plan to holiday in the south of France. Woo, get us this year. Take the dog, because I feel bad leaving him and it costs a fortune. Anyway, side note. And we're going to drive. We're going to intend to drive in this car. So before it goes, I'm obviously going to get it checked over, get it serviced because it's due around summertime. The starter motor's been done, common problem on these. The other common problem is the 12 volt battery in the boot. They do have a normal 12 volt battery. You can't just replace them like you can in an old car in old days. Two reasons. One, it's a bugger to get at. You're right near high voltage battery. You don't want to get that wrong. I don't mind having a go, and some people on YouTube have had a go. But you also need to code it into the car, which I don't have the capability to do. The car needs to know that it's got a new battery in it so it can regulate the charge to it accordingly, and I don't have the capacity to do that. So I might get that done before we go, because sod's law, it's due, it's still on its original battery, which now, God, at some point this year will be coming up to 8 years old, which is just long for a 12 volt. And I imagine it's going to go at some point, and I kind of want to get that sorted before we go. Oh, and rear brakes. I think the brakes on this, the rear, because of the sort of kinetic regenerative energy that creates electricity when you slow down in this car, it retards, and you can see the battery charge up. You don't use a lot of brakes. You do, but on the front. But I think the rear bias is biased towards the front. That's my belief. On the back, you don't really use the brakes very much. Consequently, I think they're original discs and pads. I'll be with 58,000 miles. Anyway, I'm going to get them looked at, because I think the pads are wearing now, eventually, after nearly 60,000 miles. Pretty good going. So I'm going to get those done. What niggles does it have? Okay, we mentioned this earlier. The weight means it's not very dynamic to drive. It's not really a driver's car. It's an incredibly comfortable place to be. So it sort of compensates for that. The electric battery, high voltage battery in the boot, limits the amount of boot space available. So this is the estate model, which I'm not a fan, I'll be honest, of the aesthetics of this car. I think there were much more attractive estate models. I love the coupe version of the W205 C-Class, but obviously practicality wise, having kids, having the dog, estate makes more sense, but you don't get a lot of room in that boot at the back. The models of the car we were looking at to replace it, I'm kind of looking at getting one with a bit more boot, because of when you go away and you're filling that boot full of stuff and suitcases and things like that. It's quite small in there. Some of the sort of the bigger Skodas, the Skoda Superbs and the sportback cars, the Audi A7s, they have much bigger boots. It's quite a small boot in this car. Also inside, spacious up front, but in the back, quite a limited legroom in the back. It's pretty tight in there. These are really tiny niggles. And another very tiny niggle, which I think all owners of a C350 should watch out for. I get very worried about the intricacy and delicateness, is that a word? How delicate the flap is for the electric power that you put in. You push it and it kind of opens it, and every time I push it, sometimes it's made some horrible clicky noise and it just looks very plastic. And I've read if the pin, when it goes in and locks in, breaks, you've got a whole world of pain because the bumper has to come off to replace it. When you click, when you come out to unlock the car, you can unlock the car, you can open the boot, and say you've still got the charge cable in. So the charge cable's still in, you come out, you unlock the car, you go to the boot for something or other. So the car's unlocked, the boot's open, you're doing your thing. But the charge thing, it releases, but only for a certain amount of time, and then it will grab again. So then you have to unlock the car again for it to release, to pull the electric thing out. And again, I don't know whether it's an age thing. I clean that charge port religiously after rain. Obviously you plug it in, and if the car's outside, this lives outside, it gets wet, you've got to make sure all that area is as dry as it can be. I'm paranoid about electrics and water, they just don't mix. So that whole electric flap kind of is a bit fragile. I have heard reports of them breaking. I am slightly worried every time I go to push it. It's very minor niggle, but niggle nonetheless. Why do we like it so much? There's not a lot not to like about this car. I hate the term daily driver, but arguably this is the daily driver. I go to London occasionally in the week. I drive it to the station there and back. I can do that on one charge on electric only, not using any petrol. I kind of like that. It's zero tax. I mentioned this before. The advantages of this car really are cool. It's great for long journeys, super comfortable. Not a huge amount of room in the back, in the boot, but it is still an estate, so you do have some space in there. It's extremely comfortable. You also have the app for this car, which I believe you have to sort of pay for the service. And I think somebody paid when they bought this car, because I transferred it over to my name by calling Mercedes. It's worked flawlessly ever since. I've heard people have problems with it because the signal in this car, the sort of mobile bandwidth, I can't remember which one it is being stopped by the app. I've not had a problem. I'm able to lock this car, unlock this car, set the preheater, check the MPG, look at the tyre pressures, the app capability. It tells me the charging status when I plug it in. It also is ring fenced, so it tells me when it goes outside an area, if someone, if it gets nicked. It's really cool. So the app's really good. It's comfortable. You've got that, I'd say, electric car smugness on short journeys, which I really like. You can really eke out the mileage and range of this car by using electric for small journeys. Is really good. As you would expect for a car like this, what is the question a lot of people ask is MPG. There are two things that have improved the MPG massively on this car, and I've been tracking the MPG of all the miles I did up until it had some work, and they obviously unplugged the battery and I lost the trip on it. But the first chunk of miles that I did in this car, I was getting 44 MPG. When they replaced the starter motor, they must have disconnected the battery. So the first chunk of miles, I want to say it was about 5-6, half the miles I did in this car, 5,000-6,000, I was getting 44 point something MPG. Replace the starter motor, the electric, the flip between petrol and electric works a lot more efficiently. Straight away I noticed a positive difference in MPG, like it went up instantly. The other thing is tyre pressures, and arguably I set them probably on the maximum that they're supposed to be set at, like this car is fully laden, largely because of it rolls and coasts a lot more, and you think how much of a difference can that really make? But you get a lot, obviously, of less rolling resistance with a higher pressure in your tyre, and the difference is noticeable in MPG, to the point where this car is now averaging 47 MPG, which to me, for a 270 odd brake horsepower petrol engine car, is really good, and I'm super happy with it. And I can't think of anything, again, when I look at replacing it for a non-hybrid car, you'd have to buy a diesel to get that kind of MPG. And it just works. A lot of people are not fans of PHEVs, but I like this because it works. It's got that two personalities to it. You can cruise on the motorway. You don't have to worry about electric anxiety range. You can get into town. You can switch to electric, and you're not polluting the environment. And I know you can talk about how electric isn't great and all the rest of it, but I do really like PHEVs. There you go. I said it. as a car enthusiast, look back at the channel of the other cars I've had. I'm a big fan of FEVs, I like them. So yeah, going back, MPG 47 is what I'm getting now. Everybody go, oh, what's it like in Sport Plus? The full stripped back, petrol only, gear change mode. Well, yeah, I've not driven solely in Sport Plus. I imagine you're going to get down to mid-20s, 27 MPG, Sport Plus only. You're going to stretch the 2-litre engine in this car with the extra weight that it carries. But what I have done is kind of made progress, let's say, on a long journey in this car. Like, I've not hung about in the nicest possible way. And the lowest I could get it down to was 32 MPG. And for the journey I was doing, and for the fact that I was not hanging about, pretty pleased with that, 32 MPG. Alright, thanks for watching this pedaler video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget, if you haven't done, subscribe to the channel, write in the comments, tell us what you think, share it, like it, comment, all that good stuff. We'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. Cheers.